Harry and Meghan Markle's surrogacy scandal has entered the mainstream media domain.
For years, a single claim has refused to die. It shows up in comment sections in tabloid headlines, in late-night video essays with dramatic music underneath. The claim is simple to state and almost impossible to kill. That Meghan Markle never actually carried her children, that Archie and Lilibet arrived through a secret surrogate, and that Buckingham Palace has spent years quietly covering it up. It sounds like the kind of story that would break wide open the moment someone found real proof. And yet, after 6 years of recycling, no proof has ever surfaced. What has surfaced again and again is the rumor itself, reborn under new headlines attached to new insiders, and presented to a new audience as if it were happening for the first time. This is the story of how that happened, who kept the rumor alive, and what the actual, verifiable record shows. The surrogacy rumor didn't begin with a leak from inside the palace. It began with family conflict. Long before any tabloid picked up the thread, Meghan's estranged half-sister Samantha Markle and her father Thomas Markle had already become fixtures of British and American tabloid coverage, giving interviews that were frequently critical of Meghan. Somewhere in that steady stream of family commentary, the suggestion took root that Meghan hadn't carried her pregnancies herself. There was no document behind it, no witness, no confirmed source, just a claim from estranged relatives that tabloids were eager to print because it was cheap, shareable, and controversial. From there, the rumor did what rumors do online. It mutated. Gossip sites picked it up. Then came the insider era of the story. Anonymous sourcing that gave the claim a veneer of authority without ever producing anything that could be checked. A widely circulated version quoted an unnamed palace courtier, telling a tabloid outlet that speculation about the children had been simmering for years. That's a quote from an anonymous, unverified source, not a statement from a palace, not a confirmed insider, and not evidence of anything actually happening behind closed doors. It's the exact mechanism by which unfounded claims get laundered into something that sounds like reporting. In April 2024, the rumor jumped to a new level of manufactured credibility. A screenshot began circulating on social media that appeared to show an official post from Kensington Palace's account, apologizing for any misunderstanding and seeming to confirm that Harry and Meghan had used a surrogate. It looked, at a glance, like the smoking gun people had been waiting for. It wasn't. Fact-checkers at Snopes examined the image and found it did not exist on Kensington Palace's real account. The screenshot contained telltale signs of fabrication, inconsistent line spacing, grammatical errors that an official royal communications team would never let through, and a location tag placing the post at Frogmore Cottage, which was Harry and Meghan's residence at the time, not Prince William and Kate's. In other words, someone built a fake royal statement, attributed it to the wrong household, and it still fooled enough people to go viral. Buckingham Palace's official website has never made any reference to surrogacy in connection with Archie's birth announcement in May 2019, and no reputable outlet has produced anything to contradict that record. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because it tells you something about how this entire story has been built. It isn't one piece of solid evidence being interpreted differently by different people. It's a chain of anonymous quotes, family disputes, and at least one outright fabricated document, each one lending false weight to the one before it. Strip away the speculation, and the record is short and consistent. Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor was born on May 6, 2019, and his birth was announced through the same standard royal channels used for prior generations. Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor was born in 2021. Neither announcement mentioned surrogacy, and no medical authority, court filing, or credible witness has ever come forward with documentation suggesting either birth happened differently than described. Meghan herself has been photographed and filmed visibly pregnant on multiple public occasions during both pregnancies, including, in the case of Lilibet's pregnancy, footage the couple later shared themselves. Critics have tried to pick apart these appearances frame by frame, arguing that certain movements looked inconsistent with pregnancy. But this movement looked strange to me, is commentary, not evidence, and it hasn't been backed by any medical professional willing to put their name to that claim publicly. Multiple independent fact-checking organizations that specialize in exactly this kind of viral claim, the kind that spreads faster than it can be verified, have looked into the surrogacy rumor repeatedly over several years. Every one of them has reached the same conclusion. There is no credible, verifiable evidence supporting it. What they find instead every time is the same pattern. Family accusations repackaged as reporting anonymous sourcing that can't be traced, and old claims recirculated as if they were breaking news. Here's where the story gets more interesting than a simple debunk, because there's a real argument buried underneath the conspiracy theory, and it's worth taking seriously even while rejecting the theory itself. Some legal commentators have pointed out that if a high-profile couple genuinely had used a surrogate, standard surrogacy arrangements typically come with confidentiality agreements, and family law in multiple jurisdictions can make the legal parentage of a child born by a surrogate difficult to establish publicly in the first place. In other words, the argument goes, absence of public proof isn't automatically proof that nothing happened, because private surrogacy arrangements are, by design, kept private. That's a fair point about how surrogacy law works in the abstract. But it's also exactly the kind of reasoning that keeps unfalsifiable rumors alive forever about anyone, regarding anything. You can't prove it didn't happen because if it did happen it would be hidden is a closed loop. It can be used to justify suspicion about literally any private matter, with zero new evidence required. Fact-checkers who've examined this specific claim have been clear that this legal possibility is not the same thing as evidence that it happened here. There is a difference between this could theoretically be concealed, and there are actual signs this was concealed, and in this case, the second thing has never materialized. Part of what has kept this rumor circulating with such intensity is a specific, more dramatic claim layered on top of it, that if surrogacy could be proven, Archie and Lilibet could somehow be removed from the line of succession. This version of the story tends to spread furthest because it raises the stakes. It's not just did something private happen. It's does this threaten the monarchy itself. It's worth being precise about what's actually true here versus what's speculation dressed up as constitutional analysis. The line of succession under the Act of Settlement 1701 and subsequent legislation is governed by descent from the sovereign. It is not conditional on which parent had the pregnancy versus which used assisted reproduction. Modern succession law, including reforms like the Succession to the Crown Act 2013, has continued to modernize royal succession rules, but no credible legal source has published an actual mechanism by which a child's position in the succession would be altered based on surrogacy. Articles raising this scenario have consistently done so hypothetically, framed around historical aristocratic surrogacy cases, like Viscount and Lady Weymouth becoming the first British aristocrats to have a child via surrogacy, which raised interesting cultural conversations about acceptance, not legal peril. There is no documented instance of any royal child succession status being challenged over surrogacy, because there is no confirmed instance of royal surrogacy happening in the immediate family in the first place. If there's one thing that keeps this story alive more than any single article, it's the palace's approach to it. No direct denial, no direct confirmation, just silence. And it's easy to see why that silence gets misread. Buckingham Palace's communication strategy has never operated on the assumption that every online rumor deserves an official response. Royal households have historically avoided engaging with unverified claims precisely because responding creates the appearance that a claim is serious enough to merit debate, a well-known dynamic sometimes summarized as never complain, never explain. That's not unique to this story. The palace tends to apply the same restraint to a wide range of tabloid claims, most of which never get discussed again once they fail to hold up. The problem is that silence is compatible with two very different explanations, and people fill in whichever one matches what they already believe going in. To someone predisposed to distrust the family, the lack of a denial reads as suspicious. To someone predisposed to see this as tabloid noise, the same silence reads as exactly what you'd expect an institution to do about a claim with zero evidence behind it, not dignify it. Neither interpretation is provable just from the fact of silence itself. That's precisely why the palace hasn't denied it makes for a compelling video hook and a terrible piece of actual evidence. One of the strangest features of this story is how often it gets treated as breaking news. It resurfaced in 2022 amid a wave of fake pregnancy conspiracy content. It resurfaced in April 2024 with a fabricated Kensington Palace screenshot. It resurfaced again in reports referencing anonymous courtier quotes. Each time, coverage frames it with language like "for the first time" or "newly obtained," even though the underlying claim and the underlying lack of evidence hasn't changed in years. This matters because repetition changes how a claim feels, even when it doesn't change what's actually known. Psychologically, familiarity gets mistaken for credibility. If you've heard a claim 5 times across 5 different headlines, it starts to feel like it must have some basis, purely because it feels recognizable. That's not a flaw in you as a viewer, it's a well-documented effect. And it's exactly the mechanism that keeps low-evidence stories in permanent rotation. The claim doesn't need new evidence to keep spreading. It just needs a new headline. If this rumor were ever going to be resolved with real evidence rather than recycled speculation, it would look nothing like what's circulated so far. It would mean an actual named source, not an anonymous courtier, not an estranged family member with a documented pattern of paid interviews, willing to put their credibility behind a claim publicly. It would mean an actual document, a surrogacy contract, a medical record, a legal filing, something that could be examined and verified rather than simply asserted. It would mean, at minimum, a claim that survives basic scrutiny the way the April 2024 screenshot did not. None of that exists right now. What exists is a chain of unverified assertions, at least one confirmed fabrication, and a great deal of media incentive to keep the story moving because it generates attention regardless of whether it's true. Step back from Meghan and Harry specifically. And this story is really a case study in how modern conspiracy narratives about public figures get built and sustained. It starts with a seed of family conflict or personal animus. It gets picked up by outlets that profit from engagement rather than accuracy. It gets reinforced by anonymous sourcing that can never be checked. It occasionally gets a fabricated smoking gun that briefly supercharges it before fact-checkers catch up. And it survives indefinitely because silence from the subject of the rumor can always be reinterpreted as confirmation by anyone who wants it to be. None of that requires malice from every person who shares it. Most people sharing this story likely believe it, or at least find it plausible enough to be worth discussing. But belief and evidence are different things, and on this particular claim, after 6 years of scrutiny from multiple fact-checking organizations, the evidence side of that ledger remains empty. The honest answer is exactly where it's been for years. 2 children publicly born, publicly announced, with no medical record, no legal filing, and no verified witness ever contradicting the official account. A rumor with real staying power, kept alive by family conflict, anonymous sourcing, at least one fabricated document, and a media ecosystem that rewards repetition over resolution. And a royal household that has responded the way it responds to most unverified tabloid claims, by not responding at all, and leaving the public to decide what that silence means. If new verifiable evidence ever emerges, that would be a different story to tell. As of now, it hasn't. What has emerged, consistently, is confirmation that the loudest version of this claim, the fake palace statement, was manufactured, and that everything else feeds on the same lack of proof it started with.